You're listening to Catalyst Talks. We're bringing another season of epic upgrades, bridging ancient intelligence with modern wisdom to activate our future human potential here on Earth now. I'll be sharing solo episodes and conversations with awakened leaders, sparking deep inquiry into who we are, why we're here, what's our real purpose at this time, and how can we harmonize with the higher energies of Earth and the cosmos to usher in a new evolution of ourselves and humanity. I'm Stephanie Trager, a guide to the wayfinders, here to bring in our new Earth. Join me at stephanietrager.com and let's connect on socials at Stephanie Trager. And if you've enjoyed these episodes, please take a moment to share, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, comment on YouTube, review the show. It really helps enormously. Thank you so much for being here. Your attention means the world to me. And now enjoy this episode. Before we dive into this uninterrupted episode, if you resonate with what we're sharing, please sign up for our emails and receive even more super transformational insights, special offerings on coaching opportunities with me and other deep wisdom keepers, plus new courses, events, and retreats we're offering. And stay tuned for when we launch really, really cool things that are coming up soon. And you can sign up at stephanietrager.com/connect. And if you'd like to book a consult with me, a free consultation to explore working together, you'll find a link there as well. That's stephanietrager.com/connect. And we'll share that link in the show notes. And now let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone, to Catalyst Talks podcast. Today, we will be welcoming my guest, Teri Cochrane, and we'll be diving into what it means to be gene smart, bio-individual, and the Wildtarian lifestyle. Teri, I really wanted to be in this conversation with you because you are such a unique knowledge database, and from the scientific perspective, as well as the applied practical and clinical perspective and the aspects of your work and how you share the deep transformations that happen when people step into your world. And this is such a moment where we need your, not only your gifts in the world, we need your truth. And for everybody who's listening, Teri, you will find Teri's bio and all the links in the show notes, a high-level introduction. Teri is an international thought leader, entrepreneur, and trusted advisor in epigenetics and precision wellness, a very unique methodology she's created, and the founder of Global Sustainable Health Institute. The Cochrane method is something we're going to unpack today. And Teri, you just have such a wealth of information in your bio. So I want to invite people to check out Teri and check out her links and all of the amazing content that you share for free all over the place. Right now, people are not well. And not only are they not well, they can't find answers. And it is a moment of reclamation, reclaiming who we are as humans and our capacity as in these physical vessels, and more importantly, how we are navigating into the future. And this is something I hear you speak about, and I'm excited to unpack with you today. So let's start off with what is top of mind for you right now, Teri? Like, what are you thinking about?
Well, thank you so much, and for that very generous introduction. I'm so grateful to be with your audience, and I do believe that we have to grab the gauntlet of reclamation. You said that so articulately and beautifully, because there's a lot of pull on our biology, on our psychology, on our immunology, on all our ologies, including the subtle field. And the last 5 years, hard to believe to say that, in March, it was 5 years since we entered this new world of how we coexist as a human population, first with isolation and with fear and with uncertainty, and then with desocialization, and then with the tearing away at the fabric of community and family. And even though we've come back in society, there's still that imprint of what's going to happen next, because there are so many variants that keep moving. We had the quademic in late 2024 of the flu, the RSV, we had pneumonia, and then we had COVID. So we had all of these viruses that are really kind of hitting all of our ologies, and I'm calling it COVID fatigue. So we have entered the kind of the new age of COVID fatigue. So even if you don't get COVID, or if you are brushed by COVID, COVID leaves an imprint, which then has a domino effect on the body. And it's creating all these idiopathic conditions. I recently had a client ask for a special favor because one of his clients had flown in from another part of the world and came into DC, and 5 hours later he's hospitalized, which what he's thinking is a heart attack and stroke, and an otherwise very healthy man. Yeah. And we were able to thread a needle because the hospital couldn't find anything yet. He was having significant symptomology and really was non-functioning. And what we found was it was a histamine response that was mimicking and can have long-term effects on the biological effects he was symptomatically witnessing in his body. So there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misdiagnoses. There's a lot of misdirection. And frankly, not just misdirection, but taking people down roads that can be actually dangerous for them.
Yeah. So when you say that leaving us off there, cliffhanger, people don't realize necessarily, right? Until after the fact. So what are some of the things that you're seeing of people coming to you, like having gone down certain paths? And
we're seeing so much mental instability. And again, one of the things that I have found is that COVID turns on the histamine receptor gene, and histamine is typically thought of as an allergy, right? You sneeze, you feel itchy, you have watery eyes, but this type of histamine that we're seeing, it's a neurotransmitter that's excitatory, and it has many vectors of and it can make you extremely anxious. The client that I saw right before we aired, he's been a client of mine forever, and he's usually calm as a cucumber. And he's like, I just want to bite people's heads off, and my blood pressure is 190 over 130, and he's never had high blood pressure. It was all histamine. So, and it's very excitatory, and so it's leaving people with high blood pressure, with mimicking with a tachycardia, with idiopathic anxiety disorder, with thyroid disorder, with GI disorder. It's a weapon of mass destruction as its imprint. And because we were already socialized to be out of alignment in safety, we are more susceptible. And the way that I look at histamine, and the reason why I think I'm going to focus on histamine for the moment, is that what is histamine, and why does the body produce histamine naturally? Well, it produces it as a self-defense mechanism to say, I am not safe, and there's an intruder that is coming into my biology, and so I have to be on high alert so I can fight back. And you fight back with a histamine response, and then that histamine turns into an antigen, and over time it turns into an antibody, and then we have autoimmunity. But we have lost the floor of safety. And so what I also counsel my clients is, yes, there's a biological impact that's occurring, but fundamentally, we have to get you to a place of feeling safe again.
Yeah.
And we're not safe. We don't feel safe. And even if we're not cognitively feeling like we're unsafe, 5 years of imprinting of uncertainty created an operating system of subconscious lack of safety.
Yeah.
And so we're really more susceptible to that. And so it really is that reclamation of no one or no thing has power over me. And I can understand that I'm being biologically hijacked, but that hijacking is exacerbated if I fundamentally don't feel safe. And just like in the Bible, when things are in the dark and we don't understand it, we don't know our why, it's much more scary. But when we say, okay, this is a histamine response, and wow, I'm fundamentally subconsciously unsafe, that takes away some of its power right there. And so then what are the steps that we can take in this little chess game that we're playing with everything that's going on the planet to get ourselves back to safety? And there are many decoding mechanisms that we deploy in order to do that. But the first one is checking in and really being honest. Oh my gosh, my blood pressure's up. That's why we wear wearables. My blood sugar's up, my blood pressure's up, my pulse is up. I feel anxious. I'm not being able to go to sleep. So doing that check-in with the body. Am I being shorter with my loved ones? You know, I don't have that calm experience. Am I cursing at you know, the people on the road? So really just checking in, especially if that's not your natural style or personality, that's a problem. And so really defining it and getting into those mind dynamics that say, how do I get back into a place of safety? And then taking many measured steps to get there.
You just layered something so powerful that I hadn't really connected. The histamine like reaction. They've so beautifully labeled it as a histamine response. It's a reaction, and how you've totally, you know, aligned that to our reactions to the world, and everything's that holographic, you know, fractal of the whole. So I love how you are framing this, and from the deepest like genetic level. So how, you know, I'm curious about. I've heard you speak about this histamine response so well, and like so many things that we think are good for us, and how even like just everything is such a program these days. Okay, biohacking, I'm going to do all that, or you know, we think we know what's good for us. And share a little bit about your approach, your like genetic approach, and how you deal with people individually.
Yes, I'd love. We really are N of one. You know, we're that unique fingerprint, just like every snowflake has a different organizational structure, and every leaf, even if it's macro similar, it's micro bio individual. So we are fingerprinted, and each one of us is very individual with an umbrella of we share 23,000 genes, and according to the magical work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, he believes that most genes, except for a very, very small amount, less than 50 genes in our 23,000 array, can be influenced by our environment. And so my work really follows the heels of his teaching, and I'm so grateful to Bruce and love him, in that how do we define our bioindividuality, and how can we develop a gene smart approach that is how you are, why you are, and where you are, and what goes in, on, or around you in your current state of health. Because depending on where we are in the world, we're going to be different. Depending on if we're a woman that's mensing, where we are in our menstrual cycle, our histamine response will be very high right pre-cycle, which will then impact estrogen, which then impacts serotonin, which then impacts our mood. And then histamine and serotonin, or rather histamine and estrogen are bidirectional. So they play off each other, and it can be really problematic. So the bioindividuality is trying to see where are our fundamental vulnerabilities, and the way that we look at genetic analysis under the method I've developed is what are our sharks and what are our minnows? What are the ones that you have the most variances in? When you marry them as a symphony with other genes that create, if I take this could be problematic. I had the gentleman this morning was taking turmeric because he's trying to lower his blood pressure. Well, it's actually making his blood pressure higher. Why? Because turmeric is a high histamine, and it intersects with these other genes called in the CYP4 family, 450 family of genes in that first phase of liver detoxification. So histamine can back up the liver. And the liver affects all sorts of, it has these methods of glucose metabolism and lipid metabolism and detoxification. And if you can't detoxify, that histamine just went through the roof. And then histamine has a layered effect with all those things I just mentioned. So now our blood sugar is up and our lipid layers, our lipid metabolism is off. So our cholesterol is oxidizing. That all goes to heart, which is the #1 killer of men and women, heart disease. And again, you're not feeling safe. And so what does the body fundamentally need? It needs peace and love. Yeah. The peace comes through safety, and the heart, and the love comes through that knowing, that vessel of knowing, which is that heart, that deepest center of knowing, which many, as you know, Stephanie, many indigenous believe that the heart is really the brain. It does have brain cells. And so when we can't trust our hearts and we don't know because it's being hijacked by histamines, because histamines also shift as a neurotransmitter, it's going to shift the communication within our body, the electrical signaling. And how does the heart power? Through electrical signals. So we really look at what are your high histamine foods? What are your high sulfur foods? How do they play with each other? So broccoli and turmeric can really be making you anxious or itchy, or your blood pressure is higher, or your periods are off, or you have ulcerative colitis because it
Wow.
we have many neurotransmitters in our gut. As a matter of fact, 90% of serotonin and 50% of dopamine is actually made in our GI tract. And what happens is histamine, because it's excitatory, turns on all these other excitatory neurotransmitters. So now here goes cortisol. There's our stress hormone. And there goes epinephrine. And what happens when we push epinephrine, which also is named adrenaline, we actually open up the tight junctions of our GI tract. And now we're more susceptible to a histamine response because undigested particles are getting out there. And the body's like, I don't know you. So what do I have to do? I have to protect myself. So what do I have to do? I have to elicit a histamine response. So all of these cascading, bidirectional and multidirectional co-events that are happening in the body are confusing the system, but we have a way to unpack it, and we've been very successful in doing so.
Amazing. Like 15 exits I wanted to take in that talk, in that share. What I want to hear your unique methodologies as much as you'd like to share. I'm really curious though about you decode something when everyone's talking about whether it's vaccines or whatever it is, right? Or medicine or this new drug or that new drug, whatever it is, it's like the thing, and that it's so divisive. And really, you're just talking about what the human body is experiencing right now based on a host of intense interferences, and it's like irrefutable, right? We all know what a histamine response is, and I think it's one thing that I've noticed for decades is when we're entering spring and people say, oh my god, my allergies are so out of control, is it that? And people assume it's the pollen, not all of the other things that are in the air and all of the other interferences and the food that we're eating now and all the changes, right? So what is, when you talk about like meeting somebody at where they're at, you're hearing all of everything that's going on in their environment, what they're doing, what they're eating, and what is like the Gene Smart? How do you approach things with this Gene Smart method?
So the Gene Smart approach is under the umbrella of the Cochrane method, and it really speaks to the 4 portals of genetic expression. So how might your genes be expressed? And the way that my model has been developed and continues to evolve, because every client teaches me something new every day, is that I've identified the 4 major players, which is pathogenic load. So viruses, parasites, bacteria, fungi. Now, we are only 43% human cells. The rest of us are their cells. However, when we are no longer in a homeostatic, meaning a balanced state, these guys become bullies in our sandbox. And so that Epstein-Barr that we had when we had mono when we were 16, it's going to be in us forever. But how is it in us forever? And there are antibody tests that you can take, not an active form, which is an IgM, but an IgG. I call it the grandmother. So grandma's shouting, and instead of that IgG, which should be below 30, I had a client last night tell me her antibodies, her autoimmune antibodies of thyroid are 1,300. That's huge. She's having a thyroid storm of Hashimoto's. Well, over 80% of Hashimoto's is linked to an Epstein-Barr reactivation. So I suggested her, let's get your antibodies tested, because I'll do a Vegas bet that there's an Epstein-Barr reactivation. And so when these guys become bullies, they can affect genetic expression. So all of these pathogens, and what the Cochrane method and the Wildtarian lifestyle seeks to elucidate is, hey guys, amyloids from our food supply, which are pork, chicken, turkey, and beef, chicken being the dirtiest, tend to carry these indigestible proteins because of the way that we've industrially farmed these animals that create stress hormones in them, which create these indigestible proteins called amyloids, help to turn on the viruses that used to coexist happily in our food supply. And now They're in our GI tract and they're getting fed. So these viruses and even the fungi that used to exist, that we eat the mushrooms, and it's supposed to be a lion's mane, is supposed to be an immune booster. Well, not if you have candida, which is an organism that could have also been turned on by an amyloid. So what I call the ping pong method. Amyloids are so destructive because the amyloids from these industrialized animals not only turn on viruses, but they feed the biofilm of these other pathogens such as Lyme, Candida, strep, staph. And so now they become bullies. And when we understand that these pathogens are being reignited and how to unignite them by not eating amyloids, by not eating, if we have candida, not eating those fermented foods that or mushrooms that are so good for us, but candida is a fungal species. If we eat a fungus, it's going to give it some more life. So looking at that pathogenic load. The next piece of it is our environmental exposure. What is going in, on, or around me, right? What is my toxic burden? How is my water sourced? What am I putting on my body, right? Yeah. If we have a big oxalate burden because candida is in play and oxalates feed aspergillus, which is a fungus, and we're putting almond oil on our skin because we've been told that's really going to help us. Well, guess what? Almond is a high oxalate. So that wonderfully healthy almond oil can actually be feeding the candida, which is then candida has many destructive vectors. One, it inhibits the conversion of T4 to T3. So now your active form of thyroid is not being utilized. Two, it's been linked to polycystic ovarian syndrome. Candida disrupts serotonin and dopamine, which is linked to mental health. Candida can build cysts in your breasts because those oxalates create crystals, which then create growths. So all of these vectors of right? So food is really important. What is our heavy metal status? What are we doing to limit the toxic burden through our house cleaning products, our bathing products, our cosmetics? Everything is either a helper or a villain. There's very little inert. So the environment. And then the one that's really come up of late is our emotional patterning. So we can't express a gene by thought alone. And so our thinking becomes our reality. And this is the work of Lipton, but also Dispenza and many others in the space of how can we decode our programming such that we are not signaling the protein on the cell to institute an epigenetic expression against our favor. And when we express genes against our favor, it has a downstream impact genealogically, generationally. We express the genes, they can then be downstreamed expressed. And we now know that we can go 7 generations. Once it's expressed, it can be laid down over generations. And so one of the things that I try to teach is that longevity starts in the womb, and that women who choose to have children become the chief energetic officers of that next generation, CEOs. And so that our thinking when we are even trying to conceive, or when we do conceive, and then while we're nursing, everything has an impact on that child, on that fetus. And it can either be a fetus of a superhuman or someone that comes in adrenally depleted. They've done studies. If a woman's in a traumatic pregnancy, it will steal cortisol from that fetus. So that child may come in adrenally depleted, which is going to be much more likely to be ADHD, to be allergic, to be immunocompromised. It's real. The emotions are real. And then the last portal of genetic expression is a physical impact. Did I just get sideswiped by a car and it hit my pituitary, and now my pituitary is misfiring to all my endocrine glands? Did I have a C-section and that fascia was cut. And that's another intelligent system within our body. And those neurons don't have a way to recognize. And so now I'm in trauma.
Wow. My God. Beautiful. No, I love, because each one is multidimensional, and I hear the way you're speaking about it. You're approaching it from that multidimensional lens, and oh my gosh, I have questions about each one. I really want to speak to what we're putting in and on our bodies, right? Because we're just walking in this stew of what is around us at all times as well. And one of the things I noticed is my reactions sometimes, my response, my it's probably a histamine reaction along with an emotional, each one of these, right? Physical, emotional, spiritual, energetic reaction to, like, someone spraying sunblock on the beach and the wind is coming down and it hits me in the face with the spray sunblock, that whatever that is. And it is, to me, it is so it's like a real big assault. And I'm wondering, is it the candida? Is it something that's activated in me, or is it just like wait, I'm like I'm a flag here for Mother Earth, on the truth speaker? Or is it really and is it affecting me because I'm so pure, or I am so sensitive because I am clean? You know what I'm saying? So how do people typically respond? Is it that the more pure and clean you are, the more sensitive you are to these assaults?
I think you have all of the above. With candida can also affect that. So yes, we're a microcosm of the macrocosm, and we're polluting our air, we're polluting ourselves.
Yeah.
And there's certain genes, like the PON1 gene variants, that says you're very highly sensitive to chemicals and pharmaceuticals and any kind of agents that are not natural. And so why that can also become a histamine response is that phase one, that that PON gene, which is part of the CYP family, is now going to intersect with histamine. So now your body's going to be on high alert, right? And then if you're also fat malabsorbed and that lotion is bathed in fat, oops, did I lose you?
Nope, you're here.
Okay, good. If that lotion is bathed in fat, then what we're having is our liver's backing up now. So now we have a lipid situation that we can't manage. And with that lipid situation, because a fat candida is held in a fat, which is a biofilm, it's going to feed the candida. And then our next period is going to be potentially heavier because candida tends to increase estrogen. So there's the cascade. It's so fascinating, right?
So fascinating.
Amazingly fascinating.
And multidimensional.
And multidimensional. Absolutely. And so when do we hit the toxic load that trips the mechanisms in us that says, we're done, we can't clean you up anymore, and I'm giving you body talk? So when I talk to my clients and they say, I'm having this response and it's very scary, I'm like, thank your body. It's trying to intelligently give you a signal that something is off. And if we can unpack it and we can understand it, you take away its power again. It's that fear factor of the unknown. When I know something, I'm less frightened because I have awareness, and then I can take steps to mitigate it. And part of my role in our work and my team's work and the whole method of the Cochrane method and then the Wildtarian lifestyle is to know thyself, right? And how do I know myself? And I will tell you, Stephanie, I have some kids that I've worked with. I actually have somebody who will be starting to intern with me. He's now 22. He started with me when he was 8. Celiac, highly sensitive, very highly sensitive being, a beautiful soul, but really reactive, and failure to thrive and protein malabsorption. And, just recently he came in and he's like, I'm just checking in because I really understand my body. But I just want you to do a tweak. But this young man now is so highly intelligent because he's become educated in his own body signals. And so he can help turn them off before he falls off the cliff. And that's empowering.
Yeah. And eventually, in a former version of the human manifestation and our future potential activated through our work in the world, the goal is to return people back to the natural state of knowing their bodies, and also reading the food. So the knowledge and information of gene, I don't know amyloid. I don't know the science, and all I know is an energetic read. I'm like, no, yeah. I'm listening and decoding and discerning in that way. And so, and most of us get there through our own personal journey. We have to go in and have a hit something to get the signal. And what if we don't? And I think that's the most important. That's what you're teaching, right? It's like you don't have to get to the hitting the head with a 2x4 in order to
Exactly.
learn.
And you don't have to become a biochemist to understand. It's just saying, okay, I'm leaning into this. And there's so much noise, right? Once we discern and eliminate the noise, then we can trust the transmission and say, okay, well, I understand now and I feel safe about this, or I'm going to lean back from this, right? Yesterday I tried an experiment. I did it on myself. So we're in high histamine season. And this season is really interesting. And I've been traveling a lot. And so my histamine's a little bit off. And so I just I said, I'm going to try shrimp. Shrimp is high histamine and it's also sulfur. And within an hour, my heart started going, so that's the histamine response. And my blood sugar, which I'm not diabetic, but I use it as a biohacking tool, went up and stayed up. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. My body can't do a high histamine food right now that is also sulfur because it doesn't know how to detoxify. It's working on the pollen, right? So it's just like, you're not get scared. Just like, okay, well, I'll just have to do something different. I took quercetin, which is a mast cell stabilizer, and it stabilized it. But what we do is we teach our client base to listen. It's like, okay, yeah, I know now that this means, it's probably histamine and my blood sugar is rising, but I didn't have any carbs. So I know it's not carbs. And histamine can affect blood sugar. And that's what we try to teach.
What do you see a lot? The masks. So when we're using things that mask, example, like I'm hearing a lot in the field, probably because of my age bracket in linear terms, it's bioidentical hormones and using things that mask our natural state. And what are you seeing as an interference with our ability to decode and listen and discern?
I think that's a great question. The hormone business in menopausal women is huge, especially in this anti-aging environment where women are really seeking to be eternally youthful. And I stand by that. I seek to be eternally youthful as well, but I have never done a hormone personally. And I believe that hormones have to be very bio-individually addressed, because if you have the methylation C677T gene polymorphism or the COMP gene, both of which recycle estrogen, even though your estrogen might be in numbers low, I call it the estrogen spin cycle, especially if you have a dysbiotic gut, which is going to increase your beta glucuronidase, which is going to spin your estrogen more. So you're getting like 100 miles per gallon on that little estrogen. So your absolute numbers may be okay or even low, but you're not metabolizing that estrogen. And so giving you an estrogen patch can make you foggy headed or depressed or affect your thyroid or make you gain 15 pounds and make you fluffy. And then what they do is, well, let's put you on testosterone, which is an androgenic hormone, which is going to dislodge insulin, which is also very, very hard on the liver. And if you're already fluffy because your lymph is being attacked by the estrogen, testosterone is even a bigger hormone. And the second role of the lymph is to break down fat. And your lymph is like, I'm done. And also in this very high cancer environment, these things can turn on us. So I really counsel women to always start at the lowest common denominator. If you can get by with an herbal supplement with Vitex and chase tree berry, which is it's an herb that manages progesterone, or Dong Quai, which is an estrogen regulator, or even wild yam, which does both, or maybe black cohosh or cleavers. Let's do herbs first because they have the natural compensating balancers. And if that can get you there, that's amazing. I'll give you an example of a client who's been with me for 20 some years. She was a size 16. She's now a size 4. She had been on thyroid medication for 20 years, but because she had so many fat metabolism, and she was on progesterone and estrogen, she had so many fat metabolism impairment genes, she couldn't lose weight. She's no longer on thyroid medication. We've got her on a tiny bit of pregnenolone, and we've got her on chase tree berry. and just a very, very low amount with her MD progesterone. She didn't need the thyroid medication. The thyroid medication was backing up her liver, and she lost her gallbladder early on in her youth, and also had a hysterectomy. So they started giving her hormones at age 27, and that's why she ballooned to a size 16. So it's very, very bio-individual. And I really don't know of any, honestly, the endocrinologists and the hormone experts, they yet don't know the nuance and the granularity, necessity of each individual, or you can really mess them up.
It's really interesting. I'm so many things I'd like to say to that. I'm really curious, Teri, if I can ask, what brought you to this? What brought you to this path?
Oh, it's a beautiful road. The long and winding road of my double career in 20-year stints. It was my son. When he was born prematurely. I was in a very unhealthy marriage, and I was using his adrenals. I was on bed rest for 10 weeks because I was not emotionally safe. And so he was born prematurely, which led down a road of adrenal insufficiency. I didn't understand that at the time, but he had terrible asthma, eczema. By the age of 3, we were told he would have brain seizures. He was not walking or talking. He had the bone density of an 18-month-old at 3. And he was constantly on bronchial dilators and steroids at 60 milligrams for a 3-year-old. That's, when I look at it now, I think it's malpractice.
Wow.
You know that it's just so much that the body could not assimilate. So the steroids that were actually helping him to breathe literally were further shutting down his adrenals. So I was in an institutional risk management career. And when we went down the roads of seeking the best doctors out in the DC area, and he was only getting worse, I decided that I was going to try to figure him out. I was a risk manager, knew nothing about science. I knew real estate finance and bankruptcy and how to strike a deal, how to mitigate risk, but I knew nothing about science. But I thought, well, it's not working, so let me just start figuring it out. And so he's going to be 31 this summer, so he was 3. You can imagine there was no Google, there was no Siri, there was barely an internet. So I had to go and do it the old-fashioned way. I had to go study in libraries. I studied children. I interviewed parents. I sought out all these practitioners, and I found a wonderful doctor who became my mentor. She was an MD, but had been trained holistically, and she took him on, and she was the one that said his adrenals are broken, basically. But she was not a nutritionist. And when I read this book called Childhood Illnesses and the Allergy Connection, I had the epiphany, I'm poisoning my son through the food we're giving him. All the healthy foods of chicken and peanut butter, although it was organic, and orange juice and corn and gluten are poisoning him. And so within 4 days of changing his food, he started shifting his biology. And I knew I was onto something. So by the age of 10, I left my career and came down this path. And so I've been learning and growing and really iterating ever since. And I always remind him that he is the catalyzer of this now, what is an internationally regarded methodology. And I'm really proud of it, but it was really him.
And did that lead to the Wildtarian?
Absolutely.
Lifestyle?
The Wildtarian was actually it was a client who had end-stage cancer and was given his last rites. And I had an NIH researcher on my staff at the time, and he had the rare form of cancer called amyloidosis. And I didn't know what amyloids were. This is way over a decade ago. And I asked my researcher, I said, go find out where they're coming from and what it is. And they were coming from our food supply. And he was given his last rites. So they found me. The man was dying. 2 rounds of chemo and putting him into congestive heart and kidney failure. And by eliminating the wild food, the non-wild food, his light chains, which are the marker for cancer for amyloidosis, normalized within 3 months. And Glenn is alive more than a decade later.
Wow.
So he was the catalyzer. And I remember saying to myself, I am really onto something here. What is going on? And so by eliminating the amyloids, which in his food supply, and he was doing so much chemo, which he's told, eat a lot of protein. So when you do chemo, they tell you you're protein wasting, so eat a lot of protein, which was actually feeding the cancer supply. And he had a lot of other issues as well, liver detoxification issues and so forth. But he was the marker of the Wildtarian. So I credit Glenn with sending me down that path to discovering something that has been very powerful.
Wow. So are amyloids, certain foods have amyloids, or
Yes.
is it like a condition that we are susceptible to?
So there's two ways to introduce amyloids. One is endogenous, meaning that the body makes amyloids as a homeostatic mechanism. It's trying to go into balance. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to create this inflammatory response, so then the body can self-correct. Again, inflammation. But then there are exogenous amyloids, and I believe I'm pioneering in this discovery, in the sense that, oh my gosh, the food supply with our crowding and our torturing of animals, and it's in the clinical literature, so I found it. I just have deployed it in a clinical aspect because it was just in academia, that they're more likely to have these formations of these indigestible proteins. And so when these proteins, we're eating them and they can't be broken down, they will turn on viruses. And in Glenn's case, they turned on the cytomegalovirus, which is very cancer centric. And that's what was popping him. And so by stopping the feeder system and detox and creating an open pathway for his phase 1 liver detoxification variances, I wasn't genetically oriented when I first met him. That was my daughter, and I'll get to that in a minute. She threw me into the epigenetic world. So by doing so, we stopped the feeder system, and we literally created a whole new biochemical terrain for him to be intelligent within, so he can stop feeding the cancer.
Wow. Wow. Light chains. What are the light chains?
Light chains are, it's a blood test that you can do to see the level of amyloid aggregation in your system.
Interesting. I always say, like, we're ingesting the cortisol, the stress of these beings that are crowded and suffering, and yet hadn't really heard. Obviously, this is something you are pioneering. I hadn't heard it to this, like the actual reaction. Everyone listening, what do they do? What is the Wildtarian diet? How do they figure out more about that?
So you can take a quiz on our website, and it'll take you to which wild type you are. And even though you don't have a genetic analysis, we call it predictive DNA. And again, we're not giving you a medical diagnosis. We're not doctors, but it helps you understand what genes you might have. So for example, if you smell asparagus, when you urinate after eating asparagus, you're more likely to have sulfur malabsorption. If you have trouble building muscle, if you burp after eating, if you get lightheaded, that could be that you're more predisposed to not break down proteins. If you have a lot of acne, if you have heavy periods, if you've had a lot of yeast infections, then you're more likely to have an oxalate metabolism impairment. So this is what we call body talk and body intelligence. The body signals what the genes may be doing. And so then we give you direction on how to eat to your wild type. Stay away from these foods, focus on these foods. And it's been really interesting. Recently, I was at a conference, and a woman I didn't know found me in the bathroom during the break. And she came up to me, she's like, oh my gosh, I read your book, and the 20-year rash that I had disappeared when I stopped eating high sulfur foods. And so she just read the book and found me on a podcast or however she found me and found the book. And so it's that powerful.
It's amazing how much power we have when we own our power.
Well said.
We own our power, and not give it away, right? It's, oh, let me go to the doctor for this or the doctor for that. And I love that you're educating people and putting the power back in their hand and really bringing not just from a very high level, but from a very detailed and bio-individual approach. So tell us about your daughter and the gene swap.
So my daughter, who was the healthy one, this was a really, really long unraveling for her. So at age 15, she had her wisdom teeth taken out, and there was a problem. I could tell right away something had gone wrong. I asked 3 times for her to have an x-ray. They refused. And within a month, she went septic to the brain because there was an infection with the upper wisdom tooth extraction. And that sepsis, which almost killed her, she was saved by a very strong antibiotic that then gave her C. diff to her gut. And that started changing her whole biology. And then she was a pre-professional ballerina. She went to a conservatory, and because she'd had C. diff and so forth, she was on certain supplements. And the nurse at the conservatory 10x'd her supplement schedule, and she went liver toxic.
Oh my gosh.
Into liver shock. And when that happened, she became amenorrheic. She lost all her hair. She was having dysautonomia. Things had really gone wrong. And I thought, what happened to my healthy daughter? And what had happened is those pathogens had tripped her genes. And that's how I got into the epigenetics. I'm like, how can this very healthy child fall off the cliff? And so she was my first gene analysis, epigenetic analysis. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she has the methylation C. She can't process fats. She's got high histamine. She is very sensitive to gluten. She's super sensitive to sulfur. And so when we unpacked those, she was able to then go on and dance professionally. And she went on to a very, very highly regarded university. And I'm very proud of her. She graduated magna cum laude. She's doing beautifully now. She's 27. But that was a really big deal. And so she was my catalyzer. And I remember just being up all night, going down these roads of discovery to get her better because she was very gravely ill. And we took her to endocrinologists all across the country. I went as far as San Francisco. She lives there now, kind of serendipitously. But yeah, so the genetics were tripped. And so we had to flip them back.
I love that so much. And the power of the mother instinct, that for all of the people who are listening, where you've gone to the doctor or for you, your child, and there's no answer. Oh, they just don't know what it is. Can't figure it out. Everything is figure outable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So where do you see, what's the next phase of your work? You're constantly on this evolutionary edge.
We are, and I'm doing a motherhood series in the summer because, as we said, longevity starts in the womb, and so many children are being just unintentionally, with all good intentions, being misfed in utero and throughout nursing and beyond. And we're seeing the devolution of children. And if they are to be our successors and how they can create harmony on the planet, which is so necessary right now, we need to have executive functioning and strong and brave individuals. And I work with a lot of children, and I'm seeing more and more pediatric neurological autoimmune dysfunction. That's called PANDAS. It's become epidemic. Children that are ADHD. So many children are being, as young as 2, are being put on ADHD medication. That is not the solution. We can turn it around. Children that just don't have executive functioning, that are failing to thrive. And so, I got into this for my children, and the legacy of our planet, and my legacy are the children. And so I really have that going on. We're also working on, I'm very excited, working on a portal for my methodology that will help people in real time. We're just getting a beta, still very early, but very excited to be bringing that out, hopefully in 26 on some level in certain capacities, but I'm very excited about that. We don't know yet if it's going to be consumer, if it's going to be practitioner, if it's going to be a bit of both. But again, this method is so granular and pioneering that there's not enough of us to go around in my clinic. And so we need to share it with the world, both from a teaching perspective, teaching all around, but teaching to practitioners, but really empowering the individual. And just keep learning. I love to learn. And again, my clients are my greatest teachers.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I learned a lot from you, Teri. And anyone who's not following Teri on social media, go find, because, and we'll have the links in the show notes, because you're always sharing a lot of like these snippets. It's like, oh my God. Oxalates, for example, I will be honest, like I was a kale and chard fanatic, and I haven't had greens since I think I first heard you talking about oxalates. I go to pick them up and I'm like, eh.
Yep.
So give us a little tidbit on oxalates.
So oxalates are, they're found in otherwise very, very healthy plant foods, and they're a protective mechanism to these plants. Yet in came glyphosate, and glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, which is sprayed, I believe it's 300 million pounds sprayed on our crops every year. I think that number may have even gone up since I last looked at it. As an herbicide, has destroyed our body's ability to really create the oxalobacter bacteria that used to dismantle the oxalates on these otherwise healthy foods, such as almonds and kale and spinach and black beans and even berries, except for cherries. We like cherries. And so why are these important? They're like shards in our system. Oxalates create oxalate crystals. If you have gallbladder stones, if you have kidney stones, if you have cysts, if you have thyroid nodules, if you have cystic breasts, if you have polycystic ovaries, all those could be a function of oxalate crystals.
Wow.
And again, COVID has also turned off the ability to process oxalates. So we've got two vectors really messing us up. And so that's also been linked to heart disease, and it's been linked to stroke because the fibrils, the oxalate crystals, create clots. And so these otherwise healthy foods can be problematic. And again, you can take a quiz on our website to see if you might be oxalate sensitive. So the oxalates breed aspergillus, which feeds the biofilm, which then bidirectionally back to the amyloids. So it's this very, it's like the super villains that have been created by food that used to feed us and heal us. My first book that I wrote almost 20 years ago, that's about 15 years ago, that was before the macrobiome changed, and I was pro-oxalate, pro-sulfur, because we had not hit a tipping point in our microbiology and our genetics. I used to eat them all the time with ease. I cannot touch them now. And so I hope, and that's why Wildtarian movement, living as nature intended, if we can get back to living as nature intended, and the food is regeneratively farmed, and we've stopped the cascade of poison to our food supply, which then poisons us, then I believe, over time, as our cells regenerate and the memory fades of, I don't trust you, back to histamine, you're not safe, then we'll be able to go back and live as nature intended, using those foods that were so previously good for us.
That was really a nugget. And the tipping point, really the tipping point, for those folks who are like really haven't realized that we've hit a tipping point. Yeah. And I just want one more question I really want to ask you is around the divisive nature of our world right now, and how even food has, like, the basics of health and wellness that are just so foundational and to our wild natural selves has become so divisive, which is, it's sad because it's such an opportunity for us to unite as physical vessels. So what is a word or a thought that you have around that, the healing of that division?
Well, I think we need to step aside from any kind of dogma on any side of the aisle and look for harmony, because however you point a finger, it points back at you. We're mirrors. And so to really be mindful around, even if we're not of same mind, how do we create an environment for a seat at the table? The Arthurian legends it was a round table. It wasn't a rectangle table or a square table where there were heads. Everybody got a seat at the table. And how do we join voices, unless, there's malice involved, which I think very few on the planet really have that intention, is that how can we come together and, really be free to express our opinions, but then show us with, I'm a data scientist. Let's see what the data is telling us. And we've seen with COVID, oh my goodness, look at what we're learning, right? But we have to come from a place of trust, and we have to be able to trust those in power. And so you trust by building trust. And so I believe that really there's a movement forward, but there's still an all for one movement forward. And it's all, when we get to the bio-individuality, then you don't have any, well, this is right and this is wrong. Because it's right for me and wrong for you. And let's live there. If we live there, then we literally eliminate the noise. Because when people ask me, Teri, is this good for me? And I'll say, maybe I need some more questions, right? So there's no divisiveness if it's N of one. And then you go along what is right for the macrocosm, which is living as nature intended, which clearly we've gotten away from that. But other than that is, let's all look inward and what's right for me, and then let you live in what's right for you. As we share a global aspect of stewardship of the planet.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I always ask for like one more nugget, if you have a nugget, and I think that was the nugget. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Visit tericochrane.com. But anything else that you'd like to share?
Just hope, this is a very interesting time. And again, we are more powerful than we know. And every thought we think not only signals ourselves, it signals the planet. And so, like you said, we are so powerful. So if we're having a divisive thought, a negative thought, a scary thought, I always say I interrupt this broadcast to myself and let's redirect it to a higher version of that.
Yeah. Cancel, clear, delete is always available. Edit. Thank you. Thank you for your work in the world. Thank you for sharing with us today and for everything you do. Your attention means the world to me. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, I have one ask. Please head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up and comment on the episode. You can also find all of the podcast platforms and show notes at catalysttalks.com. And again, please subscribe and review. It really helps us out. And remember, there is so much more happening in the invisible. So be true to you.